episode, we open a case file on a beauty industry claim, and we look beneath the surface at biological function, structural integrity, biophysics, and long-term consequences that are often overlooked. Before we chase any glow, and before we layer on any routine, we open our beginning case file with one question that changes everything. What is the skin? This is where the beauty industry's surface story begins to sharply diverge from biological reality. What we reveal is a living system governed by light, minerals, physiology, and innate mechanisms the industry would rather you never see. Once you understand what is actually controlling your glow, your entire approach to beauty transforms forever. In this episode, we go straight to the source, the hidden system behind your glow, starting with what your skin actually is before anything ever touches it. And now we introduce the claim as the beauty industry presents it. Skin is a passive surface to be cleansed, moisturized, masked, and perfected from the outside in. Glow comes only from external fixes and the right routine. But does the industry acknowledge the skin as a living, intelligent biological system? One that operates with its own innate intelligence driven by light, minerals, and physiology? No. Glow, they claim, comes only from external fixes, never from understanding how the system actually works. This is where the investigation begins. Thank you for joining us today. I am Heidi Palian, and I am joined here with my co-host, Lauren Bradley.
We are the Beauty Dossier, and we have a case, and we're hot on the tail of this case.
We are. There is so much to talk about here, and it's more than just the external.
I think that the boil down is that the skin, the industry calls the skin just, like you said, something that has to be managed and organized and fixed topically. But really, it's a highly, highly um, metabolic barrier and also an interface that is in constant back and forth dialogue between your inner world and the outer environment and the outer cues. And in that statement, it encompasses a framework of how that inner world works and how that inner world communicates and communes with the outer world in timing and in metabolization, for lack of, an overarching term.
Absolutely. I remember back when I was in aesthetic school, the way that they present the skin is very different. It's very clinical, it's very surface level. And uh, I didn't really begin to understand it fully at the depths of what it is until I began to study mineral metabolism as well as more of the circadian rhythms. And when you look into it at that level, you realize that it is this very, very complex, intelligent interface that is communicating bidirectionally, not only inside out, but outside in. And that changes approach to everything because you really realize that there is so much more that is needed in order to keep the integrity where it should be. And it changes perspective of what we have been taught about the skin. It's way more than just an organ and an endocrine organ at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also, changes that perspective, like you say, in terms of how we interface with it and how we care for it. So, in terms of the industry claim of looking at it from a disconnected perspective, what we hope to do today is to expand the perspective so that it is understood that not only do you have to care for the surface in the surface kind of isolated way that skincare does approach it or the industry does approach it. It's like this needs to be stopped. This needs to be fixed. This needs to be arrested here. If I do this, then if I add this, then I'll stop that. But in terms of this conversation today, we will be looking at mineral balance framework and circadian timing framework so that we can start to weave those two aspects into the the overarching topic that is skincare. And then we can look at the topicals, the mechanisms of approach from a much different angle when we can get up in the air and see 365 and then also turn it into a holistic experience rather than something separate. I think that as we progress with like wellness overall, it's a process of understanding the system that we are and the holistics of everything. And skincare so far has kind of been left out of the conversation. And hopefully, this framework can allow us to understand more of that system, look at our skincare more holistically as inner and outer wellness care, and then build upon what we'll be talking about in the upcoming files as we examine this from multiple different angles.
Yeah, I hear that as a more narrow lens, bringing the lens in a little bit tighter and cleaner to have a broader perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And also, but in a synergistic,
yes.
synergizing the
Well,
lens, narrowing it and synergizing it so we understand like why.
it works in isolation, right?
Yeah, and why would you be banging your head against a wall like, "Why isn't this working?" And it's like, well, because you have to kind of widen and narrow at the same time and then synergize.
Right. Well, I know you have a big list of notes, as do I. There might
Oh,
be times where we look down at our notes because we don't want the listener to miss out on anything that is important.
yeah. I mean, it's a case file. There's a lot of papers in this case file. There's gonna be papers in every case file.
When it landed on my desk, I was like,
Yeah,
wow, this is serious.
yeah,
All
yeah,
right. So where I want to start is talking about the skin as having its own 24-hour cycle because it
yeah,
does. It has its own circadian rhythm. It is constantly being controlled by the internal molecular clock inside the body. And how is that clock organized? It's organized through light cues.
yeah,
So our daily routine is very important when we are talking about the overall foundation of the skin and how the body is communicating constantly within our environment and outside of our environment as well.
yes, yes. And so think with us here. I would like to explain what Heidi just said. Just open your mind here. We're going to Science 101 in terms of light and timing. So you probably have been hearing a lot about, oh, sunrise. Oh, I have to get up in the morning. Oh, I have to, maybe put some light blocking glasses on. Oh, I need to use some red light. All of these kinds of
Wavelengths.
yeah,
Yeah.
bits of the story, right? Like the beauty industry is starting to understand, like, oh, sunrise, that sounds fun. Wow. Oh, oh, timing, right? Oh, I have my red glasses. But I want to explain in terms of the internal clock that is your skin, how that breaks down scientifically really quickly. So you have in the center of your brain a suprachiasmatic nucleus that is like the metronome of the orchestra or the metronome that's on the piano when you're taking a piano lesson and you want to stay on the beat, on rhythm. And so that metronome connects your outer world into your brain and then into every single every single cell, including your skin cells. So all of your skin cells have their own little mini metronome as well, and they get from the conductor, the master metronome, the timing of the rhythm of the day night schedule. And so your eyes are the interface and that mechanism. And we happen to live in a modern world where we are looking at our screens, and there's, you know, a spectrum that isn't full rainbow, and we are disrupting things. We're turning lights on after the sun sets, and the timing of the day gets interrupted. So the timing of the day that goes into your suprachiasmatic nucleus in the center of your brain and tells every cell what time it is starts at sunrise. And then as the sun rises, it proceeds in an additive rainbow of the light spectrum. So it starts from darkness, and the first tone or harmonic that you're going to get is red. And then you're going to get, as the day proceeds, red plus orange yellow through the entire rainbow. And the brain is going to tell all of your whole body what time it is. It's time to wake up. It's time to have another day. And then as that proceeds, in the middle of the day, we have a UVA and UVB window. And that's where the focus is attuned to all of those little skin cells or the cells in your body, but they're collecting nutrients from the sun, because in the middle of the day, UVA and UVB, the entire spectrum, the entire rainbow, the full light vitamin is present, and you're capturing it. And then in the evening, it it turns down. So it starts from the full rainbow, and then you lose the violet, and then you lose the violet and the indigo, and then you lose the violet, indigo, blue, until you get to red, which is it's the first color and the last color of the day. And then once that happens, then the cells are like, okay, it's time to rest and repair, because the light spectrum is off. However, we get on our phones, I get on my phone, we all get on our phones, and we give UVA, UVB, or just singled out blue light in the time that we are supposed to be resting and repairing our skin, right? And then the body is like, what are we doing? Should we go outside and have a barbecue for lunch? And it's like 11 p.m., you know?
I loved the analogy of the metronome because there really is this fluid dance that
Yeah.
happens. I typically will explain the cycle, the light cycle as a cuckoo clock. It's if you're missing the sync of certain hours on that dial, the clock is not going to know when to cuckoo, and that really throws off the rhythm to the whole body and how the skin expresses. For anyone who is listening who is an esthetician, obviously my training reflects my comment right now. You will see a lot in the world of light devices that are being used by estheticians. And so this is really important to kind of string this in, because for those who may not have an expanded awareness around the light cycles, the natural light cycles, you do understand that most estheticians are using light devices in the treatment rooms in order to get results for the clients who are coming in who are having issues with melasma and hyperpigmentation, just all the different things, the irritation, inflammation. Why? Because much of these disorders are influenced by a lack of or too much in the lighting environment. And so I wanted to bring that point in because if this is a learning curve for some people, and maybe they are not familiar with circadian biology or circadian rhythm, someone who is in the treatment room is going to understand that concept around light.
Yeah. In terms of utilizing light as like a healing device, because that's very in vogue right now. Oh, I'm going to put on my red light mask because red light's great. But here's the deal. What I just explained was red light starts the morning and
Right.
ends the evening.
Correct.
And what does that mean? It means that it's playing in the frequency organization, like the wavelength. the
Yes.
entire day. So that's good to know that you can actually go outside and get your mask for free and in a balanced way because it's going to have the yellow and it's going to have the green and the red and it's just going to have all of the other colors. Um,
Well, that's the
but
important thing. Yes, is
yeah,
that there is a spectrum. When you're
right,
using it in an isolated form, my point in bringing that in was solely to help the listener connect to the fact that light is necessary for the skin, and there is a rhythm to that light. And I know you and I, Lauren, we have future episodes that we are planning, and there is going to be one all about light devices.
yeah,
And so we'll get deeper into all of that in the future episodes. But just knowing that light is necessary for how the skin functions as a whole and the
yeah,
internal mechanisms.
absolutely. Not only is it necessary, but it's also necessary to understand the palette that you have and how to use the palette. And sometimes you can use the palette with just red, and sometimes you can, you have to combat the palette that is just blue coming off of your phone or your car device or when you walk into a Target at 9 p.m. And it's crazy, all of those kinds of understandings of the palette that is being presented and then how that palette affects everything, because I think there's a disconnect. Sometimes it's like, "Oh, I'll just put my red light mask on and I'll be good." But it's like, well, yes, but then also understand how you have a box of crayons and you're like, "Oh, the red crayon is my favorite. I'm gonna make a mask out of it," or the whatever the treatment is. It's understanding that you're separating it from the box of the entire Crayola set.
Yes, it's a spectrum, and the spectrum is really what is necessary in order for all of those communications to begin to happen at a cellular level inside the body, which is one of the reasons why light is so key, because all of that signaling that is coming in through the suprachiasmatic nucleus that Lauren talked about in the beginning, that part of the brain that receives that direct light input, that is what is setting up the body in its natural rhythm. And as a result, communication throughout the entire body, but also to the skin, that's what that foundation is doing. So I think we
Yes.
have established that the skin is more than just the suit that we're wearing, and it is
Yes.
pretty intelligent that it's picking up on things outside and coming in this bidirectional relationship, which sets the tone for other deeper functions for how the skin expresses.
Yeah. Yeah, and in terms of what you just said there, we have melanin, and melanin is like a semiconductor to light, basically, and it is a communicator, and it is inside of us. It's inside of our skin. It's inside of our eyes, our ears, our hair, and it's a semiconductor. Semiconductor is a biological communication device to that light spectrum that makes through that our skin a communication organ. And a lot of times we're just like, "Oh, it's a protection organ," but it's like, yeah, it's a protection organ, but it's also a primary communication organ, and the communication is with that light spectrum, and that light spectrum is food and fuel and life sustenance and the the recipe for wellness, health, and also regeneration.
Yeah, I know a lot of people just think melanin as, what makes skin darker or less pigmented, but it's more than that, as you
Yeah,
just explained. Yeah.
yeah,
Using the M word, I'm going to bring in cortisol and melatonin because when we're talking about light as well, that's important. And I know you and I were talking before the show about how cortisol really gets a bad rap. And also, too, we think of melatonin as just being a sleep supplement, but let's talk about how cortisol and melatonin play a direct role in the syncing of our biology.
Yes. Yes. So, the one key thing that I think we have to understand is the flow of the entire day and then that day night schedule and rhythm where it repeats. The cortisol and the melatonin on that seesaw, it's not just, oh, my cortisol during the day and then my melatonin in the evening. The amount it's interwoven. So the amount of melatonin that you can make at sunset depends on whether or not you saw and began the process at sunrise.
Right.
So sometimes when I talk to a client and I am explaining, this process, I will say, and I'm sure you agree with me, Heidi, I will say to them, do you see sunrise and sunset? And they're like, oh, yeah, I did the sunset. And I'm like, no, 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 no. To get the melatonin, it has to start at sunrise. All of that starts at sunrise because they are such interwoven hormones that are creating anabolic and catabolic reactions of the tide of building and repairing, and all sorts of other things. Like, you're going to wake up and you're going to have a surge of cortisol that's going to tell the evolutionary you before there was a grocery store, hey, it's time to get up and live a wonderful day and heed the light and go find some food, right? That's why you're like, "Oh, good morning. I'm hungry. I'm gonna have some breakfast. I'm gonna break my fast." And if we didn't have grocery stores, we would have to go and fetch that. And so the cortisol would rise for that to occur. So a lot of times in the beauty world and in the wellness world, we're all kind of like, "Oh my god, cortisol, bad," because there is another way in which the melatonin and the cortisol expression unfolds, and that is through a stress response or a continued repeated looping stress response. So that takes your normal cortisol, let's get up, let's enjoy the day, let's live it to the fullest. And it starts to invert it and it starts to flip it and it starts to shift and change it into the conversation of like, oh, cortisol, bad, my cortisol. I want to dial down cortisol. I want to take cortisol off the table, but you don't want to take cortisol off the table. You love cortisol. You need cortisol. You need it in the right place at the right time. When cortisol becomes a stress signal is sadly when you are disrupting the light codes. That means it's 10 p.m. and you're looking at your phone and you're getting a dose of just singular blue, and the body interprets it as morning or midday and wants to give you a surge of energy and wants to get you up and out and not sleeping. And so that's when cortisol becomes a conversation that is like, oh, I have to take anti-cortisol measurements. Cortisol is bad. I'm going to eat these foods to dial down my cortisol. I'm going to have this energy drink to dial down my cortisol, but it doesn't really work that way. It's a stress management, and stress management is not only the emotions and sensations and thoughts that you think and the loops that you think and the experiences that you're having, but it also is the inputs and the outputs, stressing inputs and outputs. So outside of the flow of that beauty dose of the light code,
I like
discordant
that.
becomes a stress dose, which then makes you want to do all of the I need to combat cortisol things. And on the flip side of that, we are very much so attuned in society to think that melatonin is a thing that you can just add in and take. But this is due to the adherence of the darkness of the process. For example, I just moved and I recognize I now have less control of my light environment. And I am like, oh my God, that light and this light. What are you guys doing with this light on? So there's there's a lack of turn down and darkness that
Yeah.
would lead to the production of melatonin, which is going to,
Well,
repair your skin,
it's an
right?
it's an
Repair.
anti yeah, it's an antioxidant. Many
Yeah,
people don't know that. So, um, you know, talking about cortisol, the fact that you're bringing up how society has been saturated with this idea of cortisol is bad, you want to avoid cortisol. Yes, in too much of a state that way, absolutely. But cortisol is actually, when it's in check, is necessary for so much.
absolutely. Yeah,
Right. I mean, when we're talking about the skin specifically, cortisol actually prevents overreaction.
yeah,
It is a check against runaway inflammation. So
yeah,
all of these women out here are going, I'm puffy, I'm swollen, I'm red, I have all of this stuff going on in my skin. And most people don't equate it back to the fundamentals of light and the connection of skin and light. And that's really important. And when cortisol is in check, so many people are trying to take all of the supplements and the things to kind of quiet that response. But I think that's happening because most people don't understand the setup
yeah,
of how both cortisol and melatonin interact and play into each other. And it is light mitigated. And so to circle back around to what you were saying about the melatonin, it is an antioxidant. So if you're not able to get into that proper rest and repair at night because you're having trouble sleeping, it's not a simple supplement fix. It's looking at what were you doing the day before? How are you setting up the day? And then that allows you to go into that proper cellular rest and repair. A lot of the skin's functions, um, transepidermal water loss. Estheticians, most know what that means. In layman's terms, it's just basically skin that's not holding its moisture. And we often think of that as an aging thing. Oh, I'm getting older, and so my skin is drying out, or I'm in an environment that's too dry. But the body is meant to constantly be maintaining that pH level within the
yeah,
body. Well, how is that done? It's done by cues from our environment, light cues. And so at nighttime, when our melatonin is not properly in place, what happens in the body is kind of a cascade effect. The ceramides, the different fats and oils and waxes that make up that mortar for the bricks, it's not strong. It's no longer glued. And so the more you are out of regulation with light, the body can't get into that rest and repair. It can't hold the moisture barrier. And then you start losing, right? All of this water from the skin. It's not just light, though. There is a mineral component to that as well, which
mhm,
I know we're going to jump into.
yeah,
Minerals are foundational for keeping that integrity of the skin as a whole. But when that rest and repair can't happen because the light is not in play for the body to know what's going on, you then end up having a loose junction. And that sets you up for all types of pathogenic overgrowths. A lot of the hormonal issues that happen in women's skin, there is often microbes or parasites that are attached to that as well. And so
yeah,
we don't really think of it that way. It's just, oh, the industry will take things from an angle and they'll say, well, it's because of this. And then here is this product, which is going to fix this. But is it really diving into the deeper biology, right? And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do this podcast because there's so much to learn and really understand. And when we get to the point of being able to understand the physiology and the biology of the body, it really does change the scope of how we look at skin as a whole. And it also kind of puts us in the driver's seat of going like, wow, I'm no longer at effect. I actually have agency and choice over how I age, the health of my skin, whether or not I want to believe the marketing claims.
absolutely, absolutely. And a good segue, speaking in terms of melatonin being an antioxidant and what is the opposite of an antioxidant? Why would you want an antioxidant? You would want an antioxidant because it's on the other side of a prooxidant, which is oxidative stress.
Stress.
And that's
Yes.
gonna lead us into the mineral side of the coin, which is oxidative stress is basically at the crux of everything in the beauty industry that we're trying to fix, in the longevity industry, in the wellness industry, in the health industry. Oxidative stress is at the helm of our demise or our slow aging process, and that is due to the baseline or fundamentals of a mineral conversation. And the
Yes.
mineral conversation that we want to outline here is one of the key minerals that are involved in oxygen metabolism, because oxidative stress is a byproduct of metabolizing oxygen, and oxygen metabolization is a huge part of living. It's happening every single day. It is continuing to happen. And in terms of managing that process, we have to manage our mineral metabolism and our mineral balance. The two minerals that are involved in oxygen metabolism as the stars are iron and copper as a couple, as a pair that is in balance on a seesaw. I like to call copper the feminine side of the coin and iron the masculine side of the coin. But they are the star minerals that are managing oxygen metabolism and the byproduct of that, which is oxidative stress. And
Absolutely.
that's, where we have to focus our efforts on understanding mineral balance.
Yeah, minerals are a big thing to unpack, and that's not really talked about in the beauty industry so
No.
much, but it's foundational. I just touched on it slightly when we were talking about the integrity of the skin and water loss. You actually need minerals for so many different biological functions, and for keeping integrity of our outside layer. And pretty much what is promoted in the beauty industry now are topical fixes for oxidative stress. You can
Yeah.
call it inflammation, you can call it skin aging, right? That those are the marketing terms, but we really want to help you begin to understand it from that different lens, so that way when you are in a position of looking at a product or what have you, you can really kind of use discernment with, well, is this actually supporting the root, the deep level of how my body functions? Lauren, you talking about copper and iron, I love to describe it to my clients when I'm one on one with them as iron being the foundation of a building. We do need iron in order to create structure, but it is copper that actually turns on the electricity. And our skin is very much an electrical conduit. When we go deep into the fascia, the workings of how the body receives messages, you do need that communication. You need the wiring in order to flip that light on and for a signal to be able to be sent and for the skin to glow, which I know we talked about that in the opening starter of this episode. We want this glowy skin. And in order to have that glow, we need foundational basics in play, and minerals do play a huge part of that. One of the other things that I often teach to help people have a good framework for understanding how a copper and iron work, if you take copper, something of copper, a copper wire, and you put it outside, the integrity of that wire stays intact. But if you were to take something, whether it be a bike or a hammer or even a car that you leave outside for too long, the elements begin to erode it. Why? Because iron is actually not stable. It is not a stable metal. When it is coupled with copper, It is. So, from an internal perspective, if you don't have that proper mineral balance, you are going to internally become that bike that's left outside in the elements or that hammer that begins to oxidize, right? That is at the crux of what inflammation looks like internally. And you can imagine what happens with the skin, right? I mean, we've all seen someone who has not aged well, and the first response, while it's an unfortunate one, it's usually a little bit of aversion or, ooh, wow, like, she definitely looks aged or he looks aged. That is what happens when minerals are not in synergistic harmony.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of your electric, your electricity and that combination, you are metabolizing oxygen so that you turn it into water. And that's kind of the magic and the alchemy of your humanity and of your biology and your biophysics. You are turning that oxygen into water. And that is not only a quantum event, but it's also a biochemical event. And that biochemical event, when it's not properly combusted, I guess you want to, we'll use a descriptive word, combusted, it's going to create exhaust versus a higher octave of energy. And when it creates exhaust, it creates an itis, all sorts of itis. Either you're going to have tinnitus, you're going to have, myocarditis,
Yes.
itis. Any itis is,
Diverticulitis.
yeah,
Yeah.
is it inflammation? And that inflammation is due to exhaust. So just to kind of animate the process so you can understand it. So iron and copper, they need to couple, and iron needs to be chaperoned by copper. And that happens when copper is bioavailable, and it happens in the ceruloplasmin in the liver, and then it can be chaperoned properly and deliver your oxygen metabolism. And when that does not occur, then iron, let's just anthropomorphize it, is like, where's copper? What's going on? What should I do? It starts opening in doors and cupboards and the wrong places. It starts getting stuffed in the walls. It starts, oh, put that in the drawer over there, put that in the cupboard over there, and then you get iron stuck in the tissues, or
Yeah.
iron that's not supposed to, it's not bioavailable, or it's not um making that oxygen into water. So that is going to be little areas of dissonance or lower voltage, whatever you want to say, but that's where you're going to start to rust. And what is rusting? That's where you left the bike out, right? Like what
Yes.
Heidi was saying, where you have that copper rod, and you've got any other metal, and you're like, this bike, it's rusting. So now it's stuck. It's not being chaperoned properly, and it is rusting, and it is causing your inflammation, your itis, your aging, basically, because you're rusting. And so then you say to yourself, oh, you know what? I'm going to get this amazing new serum that works with brown spots and melasma. But that melasma on the outside is more than smoke signal. It's a, hey girl, turn that ship around because we really got big problems in here, kind of a message that is on your skin that's really telling you what's going on in your internal biology, which is a huge mess. Right. So you can use a topical, and you can say, oh, I'm going to use this for my melasma. I'm going to use this for the brown spots. And oh gosh, this thing worked. So cool. But you're really browning and brown spotting on the inside. And it's a huge issue. And the downstream effect is that you got it on your face and you needed to go to Sephora to go get a thing to go try and combat it, when really it's happening all over the place on the inside. And your whole biology is like, girl, help.
Slow down.
Yeah.
I'm going to take it even a step further and give a little bit of a teaser for a future episode to say, you talked about people going in and buying these products, right, in order to counter the oxidative stress going on. There is such an uptick in the online world of collagen and collagen drinks.
Yeah.
And many people do not know that the precursor for making any type of connective tissue in the body is
Yeah.
copper dependent.
Yeah.
So, if you feel like your face it doesn't have the suppleness and the plumpness. Now, let's take it into a bigger perspective and understand the beauty industry has also tried to get us away from aging, right? And some people age a little bit more aggressively. So I don't want to pitch this information as if you're not supposed to have a wrinkle or you're not supposed to have a little bit of
Right.
fat loss because you're in your 50s. That is common. But all to say, many people are taking these collagen supplements because they don't know it, but their copper and iron is out of balance. Their mineral synergy
Yeah.
is not happening inside of the body because they're missing the metabolic foundational basics. And I think that's really, really important to highlight from a skin perspective. There are no quick fixes. When the body has what it needs, it is its own innate healer. It knows how to manage the internal apothecary that we have going on.
Yes. And that apothecary is alchemy. And I want to take a moment here to empower whoever is listening, because in what you just said, Heidi, there's so much power in what you just said and what we have laid out today, because we've laid out two arms of a foundation, one being circadian timing and the light codes, and the other being metabolic metabolization and mineral balance. And in those two foundations, we have a a built-in recycling mechanism. So they're two sides of how you manage your recycling system, because you could say, "Oh, I'm in my 50s." Yes, in chronological time you are in your 50s, but your gut lining has its own timing, your
Yes.
bone regeneration has its own timing, everything has its
Liver.
own timing,
Yes.
the liver, yeah, so you are not actually that chronological age, you are regenerating. And to empower, and what how I want to put it together so you start to think about this from an empowering place, is your recycling is in your hands when you adhere to the foundational um whole picture that we are laying out here. So it doesn't have to be, oh, I have brown spots. Oh, I need this thing to take them away. Is this, is this effective? Is this is this going to work for my problems? When really you should enjoy that product and take into account your recycling abilities through the light codes and through the way in which you make energy through oxygen metabolism, which is with balanced mineral relationship. And that involves your fuel system, that involves your environment and light cues, that involves your stress levels, and it involves the food that you eat, because we're not yet going, back into full breatharian and light beings, which we are coded to be. We could be that. We get a lot of nutrition from the light, but we're as a collective human species, we're eating food. So we have to take all of that into account and the rhythm of all of that. And all of that plays into our ability. And it's what you teach your clients, it's what I teach my clients. We teach you how to work that rhythm and get into that regenerative space, so that that is part of your skincare routine. It is not
Sure.
just a product and something that you find outside of yourself. It is what you create by your habits, your choices, your mind, your everything that you do in your day, that goes towards walking you towards regeneration or taking you into a bottleneck of aging quicker,
Right. It really is the foundation for being, for living, you know? We have it a little bit inverted right now, but all of those things are, if we were to have a user manual when we
Yeah.
first took our breath, this would be it.
Yeah.
It would talk about light codes. It would talk about mineral balance. It would talk about emotional states. It would talk about the lens in which how we view the world. All of those things really do make up the entire framework for that external appearance that is going on. It is happening at a deep cellular internal level by many different mechanisms that are so synergistically just, they're just so beautifully woven into each other. And when you begin to really unpack that, you're kind of, it's like a cheat sheet, you know? You really are learning the keys that are going to open up lots of doors, you know. And it's not going to be like you said, Lauren, opening those doors searching for things like, hey, are you here? You're going to open that door with confidence because you're going to be opening the right door.
Or you're not gonna stuff things in those drawers anymore because you're gonna have iron be usable, you're gonna be using
Correct.
it. Let me give you a metaphor. A lot of times when you have all of your outfits, let's say you have all your outfits stuck in crazy drawers, in crazy little cubby holes, and they're stuffed in, and then you're looking through your closet and you're like, "I have nothing to wear. I have nothing to wear. I can't go to the party. I don't even have anything to wear." You have a bunch of stuff. It's just not organized. It's not
Yes.
hanging in the closet. It's not usable. It's in a cubby hole. Where is that? What's going on? It's underneath this or that. That is when you have iron stuck in your tissues. And, you can really look at it like it is being stuffed in those places. And the other aspect of timing, of timing and regeneration that goes beyond the day night schedule is the seasonal schedule. And I see people are starting to be cool, like, oh, it's autumn, it's the autumn equinox. Yay. I mean, I've been building a dialogue with the seasons as part of my wellness, non-negotiable. And so in this, like, yay, we're starting to understand the seasons and we're starting to celebrate spring equinox together. We want to understand that that is part of our regeneration schedule. So, just as much as how we've touched on the day night schedule, you can zoom back into the wider cycle or spiral of winter to summer with the shoulder seasons of spring and autumn where it's equal and it's equinox. And then you have these kind of heightened places on the elliptic where winter would be midnight and summer would be noon.
Yes.
So you have those kinds of day night. It's another expression of day night to adhere to. And the regeneration that you're doing from day to night also applies to that wider spiral of winter to summer, where in winter you are tearing down, repairing, resting, and renewing. And then in summer, you are building up, you are creating new cellular structure, you are anabolically building yourself, building muscle. There's more sugar, there's more light, and then there's less sugar and there's more fat in the winter side of things. So there's a regeneration pattern that
Right.
starts with day night and then widens to summer and winter, and your eating habits and fuel system and metabolism also dials into that. And so there's lots of mechanisms for iron recycling and also hormonal balance and keeping things on a seesaw. and that rhythm to stay in back and forth and proper timing. And when we start to look at those habits as beauty ritual, then your classical tools in the skincare realm start to take on more of a expansive meaning, and then you can actually get to result. Instead of a bottle saying result driven, it should say supports your result driven lifestyle. you
Right.
know it's a
Um,
whole flip of perspective.
yes. Absolutely. So bringing in the seasons, because I think this is a perfect segue to touch on the immune system of the
Yeah.
skin. We hear a lot about the immune system of the body, but we don't really think about the skin having an immune system. And let's talk a little bit about these seasons. And I know you talked about sugars, and I really want the listener to understand the link between seasonal eating and how, when we are eating out of season, that encourages a storage of too much energy, or in this case, sugar, and that will increase not only internal inflammation, but inflammation on the skin, right?
Yeah. 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 Advanced glycation end products, AGEs. I'll just read you off the definition so you can because I want you to understand it. It's a harmful compound that forms when excess sugar, glucose, or fructose combines with proteins or fats in a process called glycation. So, to explain that, glycation is going to happen and it's going to push you towards more aging, like more um more oxidative stress is going to happen because you don't have it's let me explain it to you this way. If you have a fire and you try to start the fire, right? And you are putting in kindling, right? Because it burns quite quickly. It is going to start the fire, it's going to blow out, and then it's going to cause a lot of smoke. And then you're going to have refuel, right? Because you burned the newspaper, you burned the kindling. Sugar is similar to that because it burns quicker. It's a cheaper fuel, and it not to say that it doesn't work well for having your hearth, your fire operational, but if you're only adding kindling to a fire and you're never switching to a large log once you get that flame rolling, you're never switching to a large log that burns like
More efficient.
smoothly and there's not a lot of smoke and you're not being chased around the campfire and moving your chair around and getting smoked out because this log is burning almost from the inside out. So that is more of a fat burning state of the body that
Less
you
interference.
yeah.
Yes.
So, I like to explain that to my clients where if you're constantly eating sugar all the time, you're just putting pine needles on your fire over and over. You never switch to a giant log, an energy efficient log that creates less exhaust because the pine needles are explosive and they cause the fire to roar and then also be very smoky, and so that is it's a skin conversation as much as like a metabolic, like running your system for
Right.
for smoothness, but it also is going to cause those advanced glycation end products. You know what I'm saying? It's going to cause that, and you're going to want to, again, look for that in an outside remedy when really it's a timing issue. It's a rhythm issue because not only are you going to eat seasonally, right? You're going to eat seasonally, but then you're going to manage your own personal hearth by switching fuel systems according to your output, you know?
Right. Definitely. As you were talking and you're speaking about sugar, I think it's really important to also add a bit more to that word, because a lot of times when people hear sugar, they just think of overly processed, refined sugars that are in much of the industrialized food system. I do air quotes on that for anyone who's not watching this on video. But it's really important to understand that you could actually be eating fruits that are out of season. And to tie this back into the light piece, if you are eating a fruit that does not grow in your region, and that fruit requires a certain amount of high light code that is never going to be given to that plant in the winter. A pineapple does not grow in New York City in the middle of winter. It doesn't really grow there in the summer either, but the amount of energy that you are getting from the sun, you can, assuming you have an efficiently burning fuel log, you can more likely be able to have some of that pineapple in summer in New York and efficiently burn through it. But when the body is going through its seasonal recharge and going into a hibernated state in New York, or anywhere for that matter in the winter, if you are eating a food that has a very high concentration of light or sugar, and the body does not know how to deal with it, because that light that's coming in through the eyes, that's informing that suprachiasmatic nucleus, and the sun codes that are hitting the skin. Remember, the skin is an organ system that's bidirectional. It's going to go, what do we do with this? We don't
Absolutely.
know what to do with this. And the beautiful thing about the body is that it has everything it needs. So it goes, we're going to flip on that safety switch, and we're going to take this fuel that you're putting in and we're going to store it into the organ systems, as Lauren was talking about. Well, that's all well and good, but when you have that accumulation of those sugars, AKA fuel, that can't be utilized over time, that is going to increase the inflammatory response, and it's going to downregulate the body's ability for effective immunity. And you will have maybe a liver that's congested with too much of what it can't use. And the skin is actually considered the second, liver. Why? Because when the liver is chock full of stuff, it expresses through the skin.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can use a topical remedy. And the question to ask yourself is that getting to the root of the issue? Or is it a temporary cover up for a greater internal, I want to be careful with the words that I use, but a
Mm.
discord that's going on. And so when you begin to look at it like that, you realize like, oh, wow, okay, the immune system is really also multifaceted, and there is a huge skin component. Again, circling back to light, because not only does the eyes receive those light codes, but the skin does as well. The skin is picking up on the cues from the environment. And if you're in a cold climate and eating a warm climate food or a summer light code food, that is sending mixed signals to your internal and external immune system.
Absolutely. And I'd like to also expand on that a little bit in terms of your example of somebody in New York in the summer eating the fruit, right? So now they're eating the sugar, and sugar is sugar is sugar is sugar, right? And so let's say you say, okay, you know what? It's strawberry season. It's July. I'm so excited. I'm going to be eating strawberries every single day for my breakfast. But you also work at an office building and you live in your office building. You never go outside. You never get your skin naked. And we're talking get as naked as you can. You're not collecting the light codes because you're working 6 days a week. You're in fluorescent light. You go home, you eat after sunset. I'm just going to just explain the candidate where I would say, don't eat those strawberries. That's crazy. You're looking at your phone until 11:45 in the evening. You're falling asleep with your phone. You're waking up, let's say Now the sun in July is, close to solstice, so it's rising at 5:40-ish, depending on where you are, but you don't have to be at work until 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. Let's say 9 a.m. And then you go till 7, and you're sleeping through sunrise. You're not getting any light on your skin, and you're then saying, I eat seasonally. I go to the farmer's market and I get strawberries because they're ready. Your body and the mitochondria are like, what the hell is going on? We have no idea what time it is. I've heard that it's July, but it doesn't feel like July. I don't even know what day it is. Feels like noon when it's not noon. I'm not really sure. She's not getting any vitamin D. She's like, that's not going to work just
Right.
as much as
Yes.
serving pineapple upside down cake in upstate New York for your Christmas dinner. Like that, your winter solstice celebration. It's not going to work. So we have to look at the seasonal conversation from a
Yes.
deeper, more just like with
An
your
investigative lens. Yeah,
yeah, get
absolutely.
your magnifying glass and let me read the fine print here because we can get caught in these nuances of like, oh, I wear red glasses and I eat seasonally, but really you're just as dysregulated as somebody who does the night shift.
At a hospital.
Yeah, and has like oatmeal.
Right. Yeah.
So it really needs to be looked at from a whole system that you are. And in looking at it from that whole system, you have so much empowerment and your longevity, your aging process or your living process, whatever you want to call it, um, is a completely different story because you have mechanisms at your fingertips that then allow you to tiptoe through the tulips of your skincare regimes. And it's just like amazing, awesome flower potions that you can steep in. As like a formulator, I am basically always wanting to create the most holistic thing that doesn't interrupt, doesn't give you pineapple upside down cake, winter solstice dinner, doesn't interrupt any of your processes. But then it also really focuses on like the sensuality of seeping into beautiful relationship with nature where you're not being like, if you don't fix me, if you don't fix me, if you don't fix me, because no relationship like that, when you rely on the other to fix you, is a good relationship. Like it's never going to be good, right? You want to be in like a back and forth, like a love affair. And the love affair is like, ooh, yay, but all of the I need you to fix me needs to get pulled off of the to-do list so that that relationship can flourish and, health can be created.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. We just unpacked a lot for the
Yeah.
listener. I
Yep.
know I'm pretty sure that we touched on most of the important points for this episode. Do you feel like we have addressed everything that was on the docket?
Yes. Yes. I
Amazing.
mean, you know, as we wrap up the conversation, we go from like this sort of like passive covering or passive fabric that you have to like this very sophisticated biophysical feedback mechanism that is the interface of your regeneration. Like that's basically what we've outlined in these kind of little compartments, how to frame what the industry is claiming and then how we can look at this case from a very different vantage point.
Yes, yes. And that definitely is our objective here, not only in this episode, but the episodes going forward. And the longer the listener stays with us, they are going to be very well versed in case files.
Yeah. Bookmark
Yeah,
this because we're gonna bust some myths here. And
absolutely.
we've got a lot on the docket in terms of serious examination, but examination from a really holistic lens so that we understand and we can simultaneously take the driver's seat of our beauty, our wellness, and our longevity, and really get to a result driven place. My final perspective would be one of I'm a Taurus and we're very sensorial, and my senses, like everything is wrapped up in my senses. And your skin is this like amazingly beautiful sense interface. So not only is it interfacing your biochemistry, your biophysics, your epigenetic relationship to your environment, and then your inner kind of like DNA genetics. Like it's doing all of those scientific things, but it's also this really beautiful organ of the senses. It's a sensorial, it's like it's your interface to your biology, but then it's also your interface to the bi-direction of beauty of the world, and I look at it like that. And that's where I like to like focus on product, or I'm like, oh, how can I eat that? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Mix my senses where I'm like, "That smells so good, I wanna eat it as a sandwich," you know?
Well, I mean, that also makes sense too, because it's not just a inside out experience or outside in
Yeah,
experience. As we kind of opened the segment up talking about the skin, it's all the senses from all directions. It's everything.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and, I mean, one of your senses is your little mitochondria, and they're, like, sensing all your senses, and they're getting telegraphs, "Ooh, pineapple, must be July, change the wardrobes out." Like, they're all in there partying according to the senses that they're getting, or they're just like walking around. They're like, what's going on? I don't even know what's going on. What's going on?
Uh,
And
okay.
that's when you're unwell. That's when you're unwell. You don't know what's going on, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not a good place to be, not knowing.
Yeah. 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 So what is your final, wrap it up on your end? Like, what would you say in terms of like this conversation and your takeaway from, you
Yeah,
know,
my takeaway more so is gonna be an invitation to the listener
mm,
to, especially if it is a listener who may be well trained in the skin industry, whether that actually be as a professional and or a just someone who's a skincare consumer. Be open to the information that is being presented. See how you can take this information and be able to run it across how you experience the environment in your everyday life and also in your beauty routines. Are you able to take and apply some of the information that we're talking about and be able to weigh it with just your overall routines and coming to a conclusion for yourself on that?
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Um, just to just to add to that, I would like to say to the listener that like, we might have just dumped a bunch in your lap and you might be like, "What? Oh my god, I've never heard of these things." You will become as fluent in the language that we have outlined, that both myself and Heidi are sharing with you. Just stick with it and start to open the capacity for the information, and yeah, it'll start to make sense, and you'll wonder, you know how you lived so many years of your life letting crazy lasers in at the dance party in the middle of the night without clocking it. You'll be like, gosh, wow, what was I thinking?
Lauren, are you
Woo!
giving us an insight to your earlier days?
But, you know, you're just like,
I
"Oh
have
my
her too. It's okay.
what was I doing?" Yeah, so it's a process, you know, it's like a relearning process of right relationship with all of the inputs of your environment. It's your fuel, your light, your products, your supplements, all of those things, your relationships, your inner world reflecting in the outer world, it all is put together.
Yeah.
But stick
Yeah.
with it.
Okay. So, as we begin to bring this case into focus, what we're really looking at is the skin not as a surface, but as a system, one that's constantly responding to light, minerals, and internal signaling. And while many of the approaches we discussed are rooted in real mechanisms, they're often evaluated through a very narrow lens, focused on visible outcomes rather than how the system is actually functioning, which begins to shift the question from what we're applying to how what we're applying is interacting with the system itself and whether it's truly supporting it as a whole. Before we close today's file, we want to hear your perspective. What questions remain? What evidence deserves further examination? Because sometimes the most important conversations lead us to reopen the file. If you have a perspective to add, you can find us in the show notes. Your perspective may just shape the next investigation.